throughout the remainder of the season, this time on crunch time, Sam Edmund. We're going to delve into the trade landscape, and it feels like Izak Rankine has become the headline act from a point where the Suns were certain that they had him to the sense of fear that he is lost.
It's a really fascinating state of play with Izak Rankine because you're right. Gold Coast are really confident. Now, we did joke about this in recent times that never has a player buying a house hold more weight than it does at this time of the year. But he'd just done that at Gold Coast as of a couple of months ago. And they were making progress on a new long-term deal. They were deliberately waiting to get Lukosius done, and they got King done too. And then the other member of that really good point into that draft in 2018 was Izak Rankine. And they'd started to make some significant ground on keeping him. And why wouldn't they? Everyone else had re-signed. There's some optimism at the club. The coaches recommitted. And then Adelaide have come really hard and pretty late as well with an offer in the vicinity of being $4 million over 5 years. So somewhere around the $800,000 a year mark, some even estimating it's further north than that. So the Suns' confidence of keeping Rankine, understandably, evaporating pretty quickly. They just can't compete with that financial package that the Crows have presented. They're not waving the white flag, but they know they're up against it, and they're not going to blow up the cap to keep Izak Rankine. So some at the club at Gold Coast, just when they were settled and they'd stopped the exit of Sando, they're a bit emotional about it all. Here we go again, another player's leaving. But it's always going to be their lot up there at the Gold Coast. If you've got a player who wants to go for the bright lights and the big crowds and the traditional footy market, they're never going to be that. So it really paints an interesting picture around the players that they draft because there's players up there that have fallen in love with the Gold Coast. The Noah Andersons, the Matty Rowells, they're in for the long haul. They've seen the vision. They love it. They love life there. But the profile of the other players, the interesting psychological profile of players they do recruit that might want to go home for all the reasons I just mentioned. So Rankine's out of contract, but he's not a free agent. So the Suns would definitely demand Adelaide's first-round pick. And then you're going to get into some nitty-gritty of the preseason draft and the threat of that. Now I'm told that if it did get to that, Izak Rankine will be dead set against Adelaide playing that card, much like Carlton did with Gold Coast and Jack Martin going back a few years. So the sad thing is, he's from a Gold Coast perspective, he's been a great story this year. They've been patient with him. He was a high pick. He had the hamstring issues, the groin issues. He didn't play a game in his first year up there, but he's really shone this year, Sando, and the promise of much, much more to come. He's going to be a super player.
So pick 3 would get it done? That's what the Crows would have at the moment?
What pick have the Crows got? Yeah, 3 or 4 at the moment. Yeah, their first round pick. Yeah. So would Adelaide offer that? Would Gold Coast just accept that? What else would be involved? I don't know. We can thrash that out. You could spend 2 hours debating that. But I would have thought that would be a fair price. And they have to cough up a significant price, Adelaide, because the contract is commensurate with how they see the player.
Well, they do have to become quite strategic, these clubs, in how they select their young talent at the draft. And like you said, with Anderson and also Rao, 2 best mates, they can go up there and play at the same club. Brisbane Lions did it by drafting those Vic Country kids like Berry and McCluggage, who have no great pull to come back to country Victoria, whereas the Metro kids always want to return to Melbourne. But it was always a risk with Lukosius and Rankine, those first 2 picks they took in that draft, two South Australians with the potential pull to go back home. I know Lukosius is re-signed, which is great for Gold Coast, but that's always that element of risk that they have to take when they're drafting young talent.
So the only decision Rankine's made, Gerard, is a no to Essendon. Now, Essendon's offer was very similar, we're told, to Adelaide's, but obviously Adelaide offer what Essendon can't, and that is to go home to be with your family and your friends. So,
is it good shopping, Sando? This is the query I have. If he goes to Adelaide and the Crows' top 2 paid players are Izak Rankine and Jordan Dawson, is that the build? Is that judicious use of your top dollars?
Probably not, is the answer. But I think when you're building premiership success, you start with your power forward and your strong defender, and then you build through those A-grade mids. But with a small, energetic forward. And you see Port Adelaide did that when they let Wingard go, who was their first round pick and was exciting and was had a great 3 or 4 seasons and then got traded to Hawthorn so they could build their stocks at Port Adelaide. So, but he's a great young player, Izak Rankine. He was playing league footy for West Adelaide when he was 16 and playing really well. So a lot of great young players have done that and gone on to great AFL success.
But you have to be a multiple best and fairest winner,
Yep.
and you have to be an All-Australian to command that. So that's the judgment call. And yeah, maybe you will. Maybe you will. But I think power forwards and explosive midfielders.
Yep.
I reckon if you look at the builds where money have been spent and it's been successful in rebuilds, that's where the main dollars have been spent. And I don't feel like picking off those players from other clubs at top dollar.
Yeah, I know.
What does that look like in 4 years' time
You're right.
when you're trying to contend? That's the only... And you have to pay a premium to blast a player out, but you want to be paying it for the right player, I think. And then, how do you get it done? How do you get the Jackson deal done? So that the most intriguing part, that we talk as if Rankine will go to Adelaide and Jackson will go to Fremantle. How you satisfy the two clubs that they're leaving, given that they were early picks who are coming to fruition, that'll be interesting.
And there's so much intertwining when it comes to these sort of things too. So if Jackson goes to Fremantle, it affects Rory Lobb, who's going to leave Fremantle. Bobby Hill's going to leave GWS. We'll get to them in a moment. Carl Amon's going to leave Port Adelaide. Dan McStay is going to leave Brisbane. We've spoken about Buddy already. Geelong sniffing around the edges. So there's so many of them are going to be related this year. I think in a way it's going to be a really busy trade period, Gerard. And I think we're going to have the old domino. We're going to have the old the blocker that needs to be done to unlock the rest of them. So there's going to be some hectic times, I think, this exchange window. The Suns, by the way, they've registered an interest in Dyson Heppell as well. So there's potentially a player coming back in the other one. My gut feel is he stays at Essendon. It'll get worked out. There's been some haggling. Certainly it didn't start off. There was a bit of frustration, I think, on both camps early, but I think they're getting there. And I think Dyson Heppell will stay, but he's got that offer to go up to Gold Coast to see him providing some great leadership up there for the Suns. Isaac Smith's going to sign a 1-year deal shortly with Geelong. Super recruit he has been. I think Ollie Henry will get there. So he's thrashing things out with Collingwood at the moment, still unsigned. So it's got Collingwood supporters a little bit nervous. Geez, he's shown some good signs this year, Sando.
He's a good player, yeah.
He's been in and out of the side, but just a pup, of course. So with McStay coming in, though, or we think McStay coming in, that's complicating things for Ollie Henry. Where does he play? When does he play? What position will he play? So there's a bit to work out there with him. Darcy Gardiner's another player, speaking, that remains unsigned at Brisbane that we haven't spoken about a lot, and some real interest in him as a free agent. So that'll be interesting. Cam Zurhaar, Gerard's still unsigned. Now, refusing to sign or even get to the table while David Noble was there, and now obviously waiting to see what happens next. But they cannot afford to lose Cam Zurhaar. It's a really nice pairing they've got going with Nick Larkey there. So, as any player would be, I imagine, Sando, you're sitting back to wait and see what happens with a new coach coming in.
I think so, yeah. But you're right. Zurhaar is such an important player to the future of North Melbourne. You'd be wanting his signature as soon as you can.
And GWS, I mean, all bets are off here. They might be the most active in the trade window, which we spoke about as well, Gerard, as they look to balance the books. They're not an exodus as such. I think it'll be really targeted in terms of who they let go, and they've got some levers to pull here, given not all their players are in contract. So Tanner Bruin, he's definitely out. He just wants to get back to Victoria, only 2 years after being taken at pick 12 in the 2020 draft. Bobby Hill's wanted a trade since this time last year. And Tim Taranto is out of contract, widely expected to seek a fresh start. And then they've got his midfield running mate, Jacob Hopper, who's got a year to run, but Geelong have expressed a real interest in him, as well as Jordan De Goey. I think Hopper's their number one target there. So Nick Haynes has been raised, contracted long-term. Lockie Whitfield even just around the edges as well, as someone who's locked in, of course, for the long term. So there's a bit to work out at GWS, also with a new coach coming in.
Yeah, and I suspect the choice of coach plays a role in that. If Clarkson was to take it, they would set up to be successful as quickly as possible. I feel like if it's Uze or Kingsley, they'll take the couple of years to reset their list and reset their finances and let the new coach learn his craft while they reshape their list. So I think they're an interesting study.